Hi, and welcome to Sunday with Mike number 74. On today's show, we're going to cover Ceremony Basics Part 2. I'm going to ask, are you comfortable, and help you figure that out. The thin line between confident and cocky, and we'll talk about solid-state drives versus hard disk drives. So grab yourself some coffee and join me. I'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back. Based on the success of our last show on ceremonies, I thought I would expand this a little bit further so that we could wrap up all of the ceremony basics for you. If you didn't see last week's show, I would suggest that you pause this video, go watch show number 73 first, and then you can come back to this one. You'll find the link for it down below in the comments section, and it'll actually take you to all of our past shows in case you've missed one. We've covered the overview of ceremonies in the last show, as I said, but I wanted to expand on this, so let's dive in, and we're going to zoom in on the middle part of the ceremony, which is called the interlude. Your couples may have readings, some Bible verses. They may have poems or other things that are either being read by the officiant or other family members during this part of the ceremony. But there are other activities that could take place during the middle part also. The traditional unity candle, sand ceremony, hand fasting, roses to moms, and there's a lot of other things as well, a lot of custom things, but those are the most popular. And it's important for you to know which, if any, of these things are being done. You should know the order that they are being done, and if anything will be said on a microphone at all. For example, it's very common for the officiant to explain what's happening during the sand ceremony to the audience because most of them don't understand what's happening, and you'll need to make sure that your microphone is on and ready before that starts. If they won't be saying anything at all during the interlude, then it's safe to have your microphone muted and eliminate any wind noise. So it's really important that you know the order of things and keep up with them as they're progressing through the actual ceremony itself. In part 1, we mentioned bride and groom exclusively. But what if you're doing a same-sex wedding ceremony? Work with your couples closely to learn how they want their ceremony order to be. Since these are civil ceremonies outside of a church and they're being held on private property, they can pretty much customize just about every aspect of their ceremony that they might want to. For example, one of our couples that we had recently, it was 2 separate bride songs, and they each came down the aisle to their own song. So you'll want to make sure you know who's walking with whom, and again, keep track of these as the ceremony goes on. It's very, very important to the flow and how smooth everything goes because it's all resting on your shoulders. On my ceremony planning forms, what I did was we called up the form and then saved a duplicate, and then I went to work on the duplicate and I replaced everywhere that said bride and groom. We replaced it with partner 1 and partner 2. And this way we're able to keep track of who's doing what without offending our LGBTQ couples by forcing them to use forms that have bride and groom all over it. So be aware of those differences and make your couples comfortable with you. I'll be right back.
DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
I'm very fortunate. I'm able to speak to DJs all over the United States that I've met at convention, and we're able to share a lot of ideas. And recently I was on the phone with another one of these guys, and we were discussing many things, and one topic led to another. And before I knew it, we were discussing the number of bookings that we each had for weddings for this year. I mentioned that I was very comfortable with my current numbers and that I wasn't really pushing myself. If they booked with me, great. And if they didn't, that was okay too, because I was doing just fine and my numbers were matching last year. Then he brought to my attention that comfortable is not a good place to be. Well, naturally, this caught my attention. And he would rather believe that he's way behind with his bookings mentally because it makes him do a better job at selling and he doesn't become complacent. As I was listening to him, it clicked, and I had to admit to myself that that was what was happening with me. I'm not as hungry as I once was, so I'm being a little more comfortable, a little more relaxed, and not as stressed out, which is the good part. But the bad part is that you stop giving each and every sales call your absolute best effort to book that client like your life depended on it. So I hadn't thought of it in that way before, but it's a very common way of thinking. I mean, way back when I used to run retail stores, and as a manager, we always had to make sure that we beat last year's numbers, and you were always in this pressure cooker to do better than you did this month last year. So sometimes being self-employed, you don't have that boss hanging over you with those numbers, dangling in front of you every day when you wake up. So you sort of forget. And you take yourself out of that drive to just push yourself and push yourself. So it takes a good friend and a long conversation sometimes to realize that I've been slacking. So for me, it's back to the basics and time to get hungry again. It's time to set new goals and start reaching for them. It's time to get rid of the excuse machine and to be honest with myself. Because the only thing keeping me from reaching any goal that I set for myself is me. So take this challenge with me. Get up, dust yourself off, and let's get cracking. It's time that we all raise the bar, and together we can reach those goals. They say that people who are more confident are more likely to book more clients because people like people that are confident. And I would agree with that. On the other hand, people who are very cocky tend to run off clients because they're abrasive and arrogant, right? Nobody likes to do business with somebody who knows it all and they're all full of themselves. So where exactly is that really thin line between confident and cocky? It can be really hard to define that exact spot sometimes, but personally, I prefer not to get too close to that line. For others, living on the cocky side seems to be pretty natural to them. If someone has a bad attitude, Zig Ziglar was famous for saying they had stinking thinking, and you don't want to be that person. So when you feel it coming on, it's time to take a break and change your perspective on things. So how can you be confident and yet not cocky? I think a lot of this has to do with the way things are presented or worded. And with a little bit of effort, I think that we can reword it or say it differently so that it doesn't seem cocky when we speak. Here's a basic example. If I say we've won many awards over the years and I have those all over the place, and I say to a potential client, I'm worth more and you should hire me because, wow, look at this. I've won all these awards. I'm that good. That sort of paints a negative picture because I'm full of myself. But what if I said, and I showed off those same awards, but this time I said, you should hire me because I work really hard for all of my clients. In fact, all of these awards you see are based on their awesome reviews of our services. So that would leave a whole different impression on you Like, I want to roll up my sleeves and work for you, and I'm going to work really hard, and these are the results of that work, not because of me and I'm all that. So it leaves a completely different impression on your clients, I think anyway. So to me, the second one would fall more into the confidence department, whereas the first example seems quite a bit self-serving to me. So I want you to take a moment and look at your email responses, your website, voice messages that you may have left on your phone with a new pair of glasses, and make sure that you are not presenting yourself to the public as cocky. Don't be surprised that with a few wording changes, your phone might start ringing a lot more often. You know, I've had a note on my books to review solid-state drives versus hard disk drives for quite some time, and I finally had a little time to research this, at least enough to present it to you, and I'm going to share a link later for you to be able to do some additional research. But I wanted to take a look at where we are with the newer solid-state drives versus the older platter-type hard disk drives. So is it time to make the jump over to the new style drives? Well, depending on what you're trying to do, yeah, it might be. So let's dive in and take a closer look. Both the solid-state drives and the platter-type hard drives do the same job, in that they boot up your system, they store your applications and personal files. But each type of storage has its own unique advantages and disadvantages. The old-school hard drives that use platters are still much cheaper than the newer style hard drives, and they also come in larger capacities than the newer style does. Where the new drives have speedy access for reading and writing because there isn't any moving parts, just think of it like a big thumb drive, right? The older style units have to spin up the platter to a certain RPM and then move a read-write head across that platter to find the information you're looking for or to write the information you're trying to save. But the newer style units are very pricey. So for that reason, most people are using them very sparingly for the operating system on their computers. That way they get the super quick boot up times along with faster read and write times. But for heavy data users and large files, it's still best to stay with the older technology for now. Eventually, these prices will drop enough to make even the large data drives more affordable, but there is another catch that I'm not real happy about. The solid-state drives have cells, and those cells can only be written to a certain number of times. This number is less than the old-school platter-type drives, so again, in that particular department, the older drives still have an edge. I've learned a lot from an article that I read in a PC magazine, and I'm going to share the link, as I mentioned, down below in the description column for you. It's worth your time if you're considering an SSD drive, and I highly suggest that you read this article if you're in the market. As for me, I'm not ready to give up my old school drives just yet. So that's going to be our show for today. I hope that you'll share it with your friends. Please give me your thoughts down in the comments section down below, and don't forget to give us a thumbs up. I'm saving a seat for you in the Sunday with Mike Facebook group. If you're not already a member, I don't know what you're waiting for. We talk about the show and all kinds of things there. I'll see you next week.